All right, the story is not far away. We're still around tariffs, heading to the global space now to see, of course, if we could have that slide again, where we, some of the highlights of President Trump's Liberation Day announcement. So it's 10% tariff on all U.S. imports imposed and against some select countries, equivalent to about half of the duties that they charge on the U.S. China is the worst hit, with a total of U.S. tariff against that country amounting to about 54%. European Union will also be subjected to this. There's about 20%, while Taiwan, Switzerland, Thailand, Bangladesh will face between 30% and 50% tariffs. The tariffs will take effect over the next few weeks, over the next week. Imports of copper, lumber, gold, pharmaceuticals, and some critical minerals will be exempt from the tariff. Well, at least pharmaceuticals, good for everyone. Trump's 25% duties on automobiles will also take effect next week. And as you would expect, reactions have been pouring in. Let's see China. China's Ministry of Commerce is urging the U.S. to immediately cancel these unilateral tariff measures, and they vow to take resolute countermeasures to safeguard the rights and interests as a U.S. President Donald Trump announced what analysts have described as the steepest tariff hikes in a century. That's 100 years. The Chinese official describes the Trump administration's decision to impose reciprocal tariffs as a typical unilateral bullying practice. That's from China, adding that many countries have expressed strong dissatisfaction and clear opposition to this. Of course, the statement comes after that announcement by President Donald Trump. Also, more reactions now. Spain, they say that they are prepared to take action and protect their companies and consumers from the impact of the sweeping tariffs freshly announced by U.S. President on the minister there, the Spanish economy minister, says that Madrid remains eager to negotiate with the White House, but they are criticizing the new U.S. measures, which involve 20% tariff against the European Union, to which Spain is a member. They call it unfair and unjustified. Still from the EU is in France. The French government has slammed U.S. President Donald Trump with one of officials saying that it's a slew of fresh tariffs reflected an imperialist posture towards the rest of the world. Or Trump, they say, is looking at the world as if he's the master of the world. Well, of course, they are also looking for measures to protect the economy, talking about France. And in the UK, I think the UK has 10%. The UK government says it will keep pushing for a deal to avoid a trade war after that announcement from President Donald Trump. The UK, we know, has spent weeks working on a trade deal with the U.S. to avoid the full impact of the level of tariffs introduced on countries such as Canada and China. Talking about the UK, we have Juliana joining us now to tell us what the mood is like the day after Liberation Day. Juliana, good morning. What's the mood like after this huge announcement that President Donald Trump made yesterday?
Good morning, Eni. I think you've really spelled it out just now, actually. I think the mood is low, isn't it? It depends on the camp that you're in, but I think most people have woken up pretty shocked and very, very disappointed. In fact, you know, you mentioned some reactions from Europe, and I think that's all been summarized by the EU Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, who is actually at a conference, I think somewhere in Asia, but she stepped out to give a press statement basically saying that there is going to be a retaliatory tariffs. And I think most people are expecting this really to hit US consumers. Of course, this is going to have massive ramifications on the global economy, which was already struggling because of years of war and the effect of the COVID pandemic. Nobody wanted this, but the MAGA camp, and that's exactly who Donald Trump was speaking to yesterday, very much playing to his audience in the Rose Garden. Most of the people in the top two lines of the front rows were the advisors advising him to do this. And we've already seen this morning the reaction. All stock indices are down, Asian equities lower, FTSE 100, the SAC 40, the DAX, all lower this morning. But of course, there are particular sectors that are getting hit the hardest, particularly clothing. And clothing and loungewear, leisurewear has done so well, in fact, it's almost been the bellwether of high streets across the West, because a lot of people that were staying at home lounging in, tracksuits and hoodies and leggings that were made in Vietnam and China, places that are, as you have quite rightly said, getting the full brunt of these levies. But just bringing it back to the UK, we have had an emergency meeting this morning. I know business leaders were called into Downing Street. There was some sort of televised address. Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, looking very serious, basically conceding for the first time that these tariffs are going to impact the British economy. We all knew that. And I think that's why Rachel Reeves's fiscal statement a couple of weeks ago was such an important fiscal event, because we knew that these were coming. I think some commentators on the airwaves have said that, Britain relatively have come out relatively harm-free from these tariffs. It's a universal 10% baseline. We've fallen into that baseline. I think tariffs at the moment are currently about 2.5%. So that is a 7.5% increase, which is massive. But then if you look at, rates in China and EU of up to 54%, I don't think we can complain too much. However, of course, national security, national economic security is important for any good leader. So now I think it's time to, get round the table and see what the response is going to be. Are we going to be as tough as Ursula von der Leyen, or are we going to still play this delicate diplomatic dance, which we've been doing since he was sworn in January?
Yeah, well, I think that's what we'll see in the coming days. Another thing to see, we heard President Macron saying that they're going to meet with the business community and find ways to create buffer for those companies and businesses. Is there any such conversation going on in the UK, have you heard?
It is going on in the UK. So this morning, that's exactly what Sir Keir Starmer was doing. He was speaking to business leaders. And we have heard from the community, particularly still, and small to medium-sized businesses over the past couple of weeks. We've got a lot of very strong, very impressionable lobby groups here in the UK, including the Confederation of British Industry. So we're definitely going to be expecting more sound bites from them over the next couple of days. But quite interestingly, what Sir Keir Starmer said today around that cabinet table is that Britain, one of its main strengths as a nation, is keeping a cool head and long vision. So I think you will see less sort of outlandish, aggressive remarks from Britain, because that's just that's not the British way, and that's certainly not the way Sir Keir Starmer wants to tackle this. I think he's had plenty of opportunity to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump and JD Vance, and he hasn't done that, and it's worked in his favour thus far. However, we are already going in, we're struggling economically, and this is going to make Britain poorer. So he said he's going to work in the nation's best interest. So we're going to wait and see what happens. I think the tariffs are triggered on the 5th of April, which is Saturday. So there is still time. We know in Trump's world, 24 hours is a very long time. So let's see if any negotiations can be done at breakneck speed.
Yes, Juliana, in Trump's time, 24 hours is a long time. And yes, it's the Trump world we're living in at this time, fortunately or unfortunately. So we'll see what happens in the coming days, especially as you have noted, before Saturday. Anything can happen. We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Thanks, Zinni.
All right, Juliana. So, well, Juliana did mention Vietnam there. Retailers and brands seem to be turning to Vietnam to manufacture goods, from sneakers to couches, while moving some or all production out of China. And for years, China's southern neighbor became a popular alternative for companies trying to avoid the crossfire of U.S. trade tensions with Beijing. Now, as President Trump expands his tariff targets, they can no longer steer clear. So bad for China, good for Vietnam. And Trump has said he will put a 46% duty on imports from Vietnam. So President Trump is not blind to that as part of a new wave of global levies that was announced yesterday. And that could soon raise costs for major corporations in apparel, furniture, toy, and other consumer goods. China exported more goods to the United States than any other country for more than 2 decades. But Mexico surpassed China as a top source in 2023. So China now the second largest supplier to the U.S., and they had about $438.9 billion worth of goods supplied to the U.S. in 2024. That, of course, is drastically threatened with all of this. Well, a bit away from tariff now, an Indian court is due to hear a lawsuit filed by Elon Musk's social media company X, accusing Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government of misusing the law to censor content on its platform. Last month, X sued the government, saying a new website, Stay Young, launched by the Federal Home Ministry last year, was being used to expand its censorship powers and take down content from X. And American multinational tech giant Amazon has made a last-minute bid to acquire TikTok as a U.S. ban on the popular social media platform is set to take effect on Saturday. The move comes after the Biden administration upheld a law requiring TikTok's Chinese-owned parent company, ByteDance, to either divest from app's U.S. operations or face a nationwide ban. The revelation of Amazon's bid coincides with a scheduled meeting between the U.S. President Donald Trump and senior officials to discuss the looming deadline for TikTok's sale. And apart from Amazon, several potential buyers such as Oracle and Blackstone have also emerged in recent months in a bid to acquire the social media firm. Meanwhile, it remains unclear whether ByteDance is willing to sell TikTok or not. Remember that President Trump had also said if TikTok will get sold to a U.S. company, then they might be able to escape some of the tariff that's hanging in the air. That's it on Business Morning today. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'll be back for Business Incorporated at 1 p.m. I'm sure we get updates and more reactions to the tariff and all the trending issues. That's what we'll do at 1 p.m. I'll be here with Anita Edit. See you later.